Hello and welcome back to Koko Sleep, a podcast of original children's bedtime stories and meditations designed to make bedtime a dream. Have you been having nice dreams recently? Have you enjoyed dreams full of adventure and joy each night? Or maybe you have been having the most relaxing dreams that have allowed you to sleep peacefully all the way through the night. Well, if you have, then that's because your dream giver is doing a marvellous job. You may recall meeting Orion the dream giver and his little son Cosmo in our story Bring Me a Dream. Well, tonight we bump into them again and join them on a magical mission over the rainbow, where they provide some lucky animals with their first ever dreams. This is Orion and Cosmo's Rainbow Dreams by Alicia Ainsley. In a land beyond the clouds and just before the stars live the Dream Givers. The Dream Givers are remarkable creatures that look just like humans, except for a few differences. 1, they are as small as ladybirds, and they fly using tiny angel wings that stick out of their backs. 2, they have light blue skin that glitters and glistens with the power of their magical abilities. And 3, their eyes twinkle like the stars in the night sky. The Dream Givers live in little purple houses on top of the clouds, and they delight in playing and resting all day before they set out on their important dream duties at night. Dream Givers deliver dreams to the people of the world by visiting their houses in the night and sprinkling dream dust over them. Then, they use their heavenly powers to create sweet dreams for everyone. The dream giver Orion and his 6-year-old son Cosmo had become very popular in the dream giver realm since the fateful night that Orion had taken Cosmo out with him to hand out dreams to the people of the world. You see, young dream givers aren't supposed to help with giving out dreams until they are at least 8 years old. But Orion was having such a hard time coming up with great dreams that he needed the assistance of his creative young son to get his mojo back. And it worked. Together, Orion and Cosmo had magically created some of the most wonderful dreams, and they had continued to work together ever since. They were the perfect father and son pairing, and there was nothing they couldn't achieve together. A lot had changed up in the clouds since the night that Orion had taken Cosmo out to join him on his nightly mission. When the other adult dream givers saw how much help Cosmo had given to Orion with creating his mystical, relaxing dreams, they all wanted to do the same. All of the other dream givers started taking their young children out with them before the normal age of 8 years old, and the night sky on Earth soon became filled with parents and their children flying around delivering dreams. It was a truly wholesome scene to observe. The parents would flit their wings through the sky, holding their children's hands, and together they would land on the roofs of human houses and serve out incredible dream concoctions that had never been dreamt before. Instead of work, the dream givers now saw their nightly duties as play, and they relished having the extra bonding time with their children. Orion and Cosmo had led the way for great change in the realm of dream givers. Now, after plenty of nights on the job with his father, Cosmo was shaping up to be an excellent dream giver. He and his father had flown all over the world giving out dreams to sleeping humans. They had landed on the top of tents in the Scottish Highlands, on the roofs of houses in Africa, and even on top of a palace in India. They had been all over the world and provided their peaceful dreams to many, many people. One night, daytime was drawing near, and Orion and Cosmo could see the sun beginning to rise on the horizon. They had almost finished handing out their dreams for the evening and were just about to complete their final dream of the night. Their last dream duty was for a man who had been working the night shift, who had only just returned back to his home and climbed into his bed as the sun was starting to rise. Orion and Cosmo needed to give this hard worker as relaxing a dream as possible. Orion held his pouch of dream dust in his hand and turned to his son, Cosmo, as they floated outside the window of the night shift worker's apartment. "Do you have any ideas for a soothing dream tonight, Cosmo?" he asked, gazing at his son with keen expectation. Cosmo twisted his mouth as he thought. This was his thinking face. He always scrunched up his face when he was thinking hard. Then his facial muscles relaxed, and his sparkling eyes grew wide as he proclaimed, "I have an idea." Cosmo pulled his bag of dream dust out of his pocket, opened it up and poured a little bit onto the palm of his hand. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath in, and blew across his hand, sending all of the golden dream dust floating out into the air, through the apartment window, and into the head of the dozing human inside. As the dream dust drifted into the head of the sleeping man, a magical dream portal opened up, ready for Cosmo and Orion to work their magic. They peeped inside, and Cosmo began to wave his hands around in the air as he handcrafted the man's dream. The man was rowing a boat across a giant lake, surrounded by mountains. The sun was rising behind the mountain tops, just like it was here in the real world, and birds were soaring through the sky, chirping a delightful song. The man looked around at the breathtaking scenery and sighed with contentment. He placed down his oars, laid back, and allowed his boat to float there in the middle of the lake while he admired the view. Then Orion whispered to his son, "May I cut in?" Cosmo moved aside, and Orion stood in front of the dream portal. He flourished his hands in the air, and suddenly, in the man's dream, a dolphin leapt up out of the lake, right by the side of his boat. The man sat up with delight and leant over the side of his boat to try to catch a glimpse of the animal again. The dolphin started leaping in and out of the water, putting on a delightful show for the man, and he laughed with pure joy as he watched. Orion and Cosmo closed up the dream portal, satisfied with their work, and left the sleeping man to enjoy his wonderful dream. "Another job well done," declared Orion, patting his son on the head. Cosmo smiled proudly and pointed out into the sky before adding, "And look, we did it all just in time for sunrise." Orion and Cosmo flew up into the sky and sat down on an especially fluffy cloud to watch the night become day before they headed back home. The sun gradually grew larger and larger in the sky and glowed with a warm orange light. Just as the sun had reached its highest point in the sky, Orion and Cosmo felt the cloud beneath them begin to bubble. They looked down at the cloud and saw that it had turned a grey colour. "Uh-oh," Orion observed. "It looks like it's going to rain." Just as soon as Orion had spoken, the clouds beneath them began to drip lots and lots of fine rain down to earth. They watched as the rain fell against the backdrop of the glowing sun and landed across the sun's beams. Then, to their amazement, something unusual happened. Out of nowhere, a semicircle of multicolored light began to span across the sky. "Wow!" Cosmo exclaimed, watching the path of light stretch across the morning sky. "What is that?" Orion was just as enthralled as his son, and his eyes glistened even brighter with excitement. "Why, Cosmo, that is a rainbow," Orion explained. "I've heard about them, but I've never seen one before." "Wow, it's beautiful," Cosmo observed, taking in the picturesque path of light. The rainbow looked like a road through the sky, made up of all the colours Cosmo could imagine. There was red and orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo and violet, all perfectly blended together. It was one of the most beautiful things Cosmo had ever seen. "Where does it lead?" Cosmo questioned, unable to take his eyes off the rainbow for a second. "Where does the rainbow lead to?" Orion chuckled and shrugged his shoulders. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've never seen a rainbow in person before, let alone been to the end of it." Cosmo hopped to his feet with an idea. "Why don't we follow it and go take a look?" he suggested to his father eagerly. Orion was about to protest the idea, but then he stopped himself. Why shouldn't they follow the rainbow to see what is on the other side? Rainbows don't come along often, so they might not have the chance again for a very long time. Orion jumped up and replied, "That's a great idea, Cosmo. Let's follow the rainbow and see what is at the other end." Orion and Cosmo left the top of the cloud and flew out into the rainy morning sky. They traced the edge of the stunning, colourful rainbow and flew as far as the rainbow would take them. The rainbow seemed to stretch for miles and miles. They flew far away from the human towns they had just been working in. They followed the rainbow above forests and rivers, and even beyond the sea. For a moment, Orion and Cosmo wondered if the rainbow would ever end. But then they spotted an island in the distance. This small island was placed in the middle of the sea, far away from any other land. The rainbow appeared to finish there, on the shores of the island. Orion and Cosmo landed on the shore where the rainbow ended and took a look around. It was a yellow, sandy beach, with a large forest behind and nothing much else. "This is strange," Cosmo observed, looking all around. "There is nothing here. Why would the rainbow just finish here?" Orion didn't know why, but he didn't want to give up hope. The rainbow must lead here for a reason. Perhaps there was something interesting hiding within the woods. "Let's take a look in the forest. We might find something in there," suggested Orion. Orion and Cosmo left the end of the rainbow and flew into the woodland behind the beach, hoping they would find something of interest inside. They darted through the trees, weaving in and out of the tree trunks and swooping over the tops of flowers until they suddenly stopped in their tracks. They could hear music. They heard the sound of voices singing together and the many strains of musical instruments blending in perfect harmony. Orion and Cosmo followed the sound of the music and eventually found their way to the end of the forest, where the land opened up to greener pastures of rolling hills and bright sunshine. And on this land, they found the source of the music. But it was not what they expected. Orion and Cosmo could hardly believe their eyes as they fell upon the inhabitants of the island at the end of the rainbow. They were animals of all shapes and sizes, singing together with human voices. There was a big bear playing the trombone and a tiny lizard playing the flute. A parrot was using its feathery wings to play the harp, and a striped tiger was strumming a guitar. All around, different animals were playing musical instruments and singing and dancing together. Orion and Cosmo's eyes sparkled with wonderment as they took in the incredible scene. Everything seemed to shine brightly with the most incredible colours, the animals included. The grass was greener here than they'd ever seen. The sky was so blue that it looked as if it had been painted, and the sun so yellow that it had never shone so luminously. Even the animals' coats boasted brighter shades of colour compared to in the human world. The tiger had never looked so orange and the parrot never so red. Maybe this was the result of the magic of the bright colours of the rainbow. All of a sudden, the celebratory music halted, and the animals of the island turned to look at Orion and Cosmo. "Hello, friends," the big bear called out to them. "Welcome to the end of the rainbow." Orion and Cosmo flew forward sheepishly. "We're sorry to disturb. We didn't mean to interrupt your music. We were just enjoying watching you all," Orion apologized to the bear. "You're very good," Cosmo added sweetly. The bear was probably 1,000 times the size of Orion and Cosmo, but they didn't feel nervous one bit. He seemed friendly. In fact, all of the animals were very kind and welcomed them warmly. Would you like to join our band? We need someone to play the tambourine, the parrot chirped in. Have you ever seen a talking lizard before? I bet you haven't. But I've never seen whatever you are before either, the lizard rambled. What exactly are you? The stripy tiger asked, intrigued. We are dream givers, Orion announced proudly. He expected the animals to be impressed by their important job, but instead the animals at the end of the rainbow simply looked at them, puzzled and confused. What is a dream giver? The big bear questioned. Cosmo eagerly answered the question and replied, We deliver dreams to everyone around the world while they sleep. It's a very important job. The talking animals all looked from one to the other, even more bewildered than before. But what is a dream? The parrot added. Orion and Cosmo were surprised. How could the animals not know what a dream was? Do you sleep at night? Orion asked. The animals nodded in confirmation. Well, you know the amazing make-believe things that you do and places you go inside your head while you sleep? Well, those are dreams, and we create them for people while they sleep, Orion explained. The animals looked even more befuddled than before. I've never had a dream before, the tiger replied defiantly. No, I don't think I've had one of those either, the lizard agreed. Orion and Cosmo looked at each other in bewilderment. You have never had a dream? Cosmo cried in disbelief. How disappointing! Orion racked his brain, trying to think of an explanation for why the animals at the end of the rainbow had never experienced dreams before. He had never seen this island while flying around the world at night, handing out dreams. So perhaps the problem was that the island couldn't be seen at night time. Maybe you don't have a dream giver, he suggested. The dream givers may not be able to get to your island without the rainbow to lead the way. The bear nodded his head and added, Oh yes, maybe. The rainbow doesn't come round very often. It only appears at very specific times in places where the rain and the sun meet in the sky. Orion began to put the pieces of the puzzle together. A rainbow can only appear in the daytime when the sun is out. However, the dream givers only come out at night when the sun is gone. That must be why the island animals had never had dreams before. The dream givers couldn't find the animals to give dreams to them. A buzz began to emerge amongst the animals. They were all very intrigued by the notion of dreams, and they were starting to feel as though they were missing out on something. Cosmo glanced around at all the chattering animals and felt sorry for them. Sleeping must be so dull without dreams. So he had an idea. Would you like us to give you some dreams? He asked the crowd of animals. They started to talk animatedly, fascinated by the idea. "Could you really do that?" the big bear asked with big, pleading eyes. "Of course," Cosmo replied. "Giving out dreams is what we do best." When night fell, the animals of the island snuggled up into their cozy beds like normal. The only difference this evening was that they could hardly settle down for excitement. They all eagerly anticipated their dreams and had lots of questions for Orion and Cosmo. They wondered if they had to do anything themselves, but Orion and Cosmo assured them that they would do all the work. The animals simply had to lay down their heads and drift off to sleep like normal. Some of the animals even put in requests for the types of dreams they would like to have. Orion and Cosmo happily made note of the requests and waited patiently for the animals to all fall asleep. Then they could get to work. Once all of the animals were snoring in their beds, Orion and Cosmo grabbed their bags of dream dust and set to work giving the animals their first ever dreams. They began by sprinkling dream dust onto the parrot. They gave the parrot an adventurous dream where he was the beloved accomplice to a pirate. The parrot perched impressively on the shoulder of the pirate while they sailed out to sea and embarked upon battles and missions to find buried treasure. Next, they provided the lizard with a dream about a big birthday party thrown specially for him. The lizard wore a wide-rimmed straw hat on his head and a brightly coloured pinstriped suit for the occasion, and all of his friends attended the party in his honour. There was a cake and rapturous music, and they all played games and laughed until they felt silly. The lizard appeared to be having the time of his life. Next up, they handcrafted a dream for the stripy tiger, where they were climbing to the top of the highest mountain in the world. When they reached the top, the tiger sprouted huge orange and black striped wings out of their back, and they leapt off the top of the mountain and soared out into the sky, flying with the birds. Then, for the big bear's dream, they designed a huge theatre with an audience of thousands of people in front of him. The bear was performing in his own one-bear show, entertaining the audience with his unbelievable musical skills. He played a jazz number on the trombone and tinkled away on the piano faster than anybody had ever played. He sang an aria in his booming operatic voice and finished by playing a beautiful lullaby on the violin. When he was done, he proudly took his bow and wiped away a happy tear from his eye. The big bear's ambition of becoming an accomplished musical genius and performing to an audience of thousands had come true in his dream. Orion and Cosmo moved from animal to animal, handing out spectacularly fun dreams to all of their sleepy heads. Orion and Cosmo found their imaginations running wild, and they felt even more inspired than they had before. It was great fun giving dreams to animals. When they had given out the last dream to the last sleeping animal, they laid down themselves, tired from a very long couple of days of work. They hadn't slept in 2 days, and they were starting to feel especially drowsy. They looked out on all the snoring animals, happily dreaming away, and they smiled with accomplishment. "I'm so glad that we have been able to give them their first ever dreams," Cosmo whispered sleepily. "Me too," Orion agreed, wrapping his arm around his young son and pulling him close. Cosmo rested his head against his father's side and closed his eyes. "Oh, will we go home tomorrow?" he asked with a yawn. Orion assured him that they would return home in the morning after a good night's sleep. They would follow the colourful path of the rainbow back to the clouds where their home was, and they would have one amazing story to tell. Cosmo nuzzled up closer to his father and quickly fell asleep. Orion watched fondly as his son drifted away into a sweet slumber. Then he used the last bit of his dream dust to sprinkle it onto his son's forehead. He waved his hand above the dream portal that appeared and created a dream for Cosmo. For his dream, he magicked Cosmo back onto the rainbow path through the sky. With every step along the rainbow that Cosmo took, his body transformed into a different colour, and Cosmo delightedly threw dream dust into the air that sparkled in a multicoloured spectacle. When the rainbow dust landed on the houses below, they all turned multicoloured too, just like the rainbow, and the world shone with the most stupendous colours. Cosmo giggled with glee inside his dream, and Orion smiled with satisfaction as he watched the dream unfurl. Then, once he knew that Cosmo was happily dreaming away, Orion closed the dream portal and leant back to close his eyes. There was nobody to sprinkle dream dust on him, but he knew that he would still have marvellous dreams tonight, dreaming of the rainbow and the happy, talking animals that live at the end of it.